What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Election Analysis 2024. And today we are going to be talking about the current state of the 2024 election race, where these states are standing. We'll be talking about the key 7 swing states and everything else. To start, we will fill in the states that Donald Trump is going to win by a safe margin, probably with over 10 points. With relative ease, he'll win these states. We'll include Kamala Harris's safe states. So once you do that, you get the safe electoral votes for Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, 181 to 122. Next, we'll do the likely states for Donald Trump. There are a few more for him in terms of electoral college count. So we'll include the state of Texas. Donald Trump is doing quite well in Texas right now, better than he was polling in 2020. I have no doubt he'll win this state by about 5 points or even more than what he won in 2020. We can include Ohio. He'll win Ohio by close to a safe margin. I think it'll be around 9 points right now. That's what it's looking like. Same with Iowa, maybe a little bit closer, but still a likely margin for him in the state. Alaska will include. He'll win probably by just under 10 points. He won it by around 10 in 2020. Maybe he won't expand on that margin, but I'm sure he'll hold most of that. We'll put Maine and Nebraska 2 in his likely column, putting him at 189 electoral votes. And then lastly, for the likely states for Donald Trump, we will put the state of Florida. Polls have shown it tightening a little bit overall. I have no doubt he'll win it. I honestly do think he'll win it by 4 to 5 points right now. I think it'll be a likely margin for him. It won't really be contested at the end. We can do likely states for Kamala Harris. We'll include both Colorado and New Mexico, both of them showing to be around 10 points, maybe just under 10 points, so we'll put them in the likely column. We'll include Minnesota for Vice President Kamala Harris, as well as New Hampshire. And I will also include the state of Virginia in the likely category for Vice President Kamala Harris right now. I think it'll be 5 to 7 points right now. I think Donald Trump will certainly close that gap, but certainly not enough to win the state. And then for the last likely state, we will put Maine at large for Vice President Kamala Harris. To finish off, Nebraska District 2, I think it's going to be 4 to 5 points genuinely for Vice President Kamala Harris. It could be likely. I'm going to go lean right now. I think it'll be on the closer end of that in terms of the lean side more than likely. But it's really close. It could be a likely, it could be a lean. I'm going to put it as lean right now. And that leaves us with 7 swing states. To start off, we're going to look at Arizona. Donald Trump is doing quite well in Arizona, actually. In the last 9 polls, in fact, he is only down in one of them. It's a Bloomberg poll, and he says he's down 3. You have USA Today saying he's up 6. You have New York Times, Siena saying he's up 5. You have a Fox News poll, who people think that, hey, Fox News, it's a right-leaning news network. Well, yeah, but their actual pollsters actually very left and very liberal, and you see a 3-point lead for him in Arizona there, and the aggregate coming down to a 1 point, and basically a 2-point lead for Donald Trump in the state. This is exactly where he wants to be in Arizona. He's doing a really good job. You see Kamala Harris in her little photo op she did at the border in Arizona is an absolute joke. People know it. She was there for 20 minutes. It's an absolute joke of an attempt to try to save the state and her immigration disapproval, which is just underwater. And so you look at Arizona and you say, okay, well, Donald Trump, that's a flip for him. And he lost his state in 2020 by around, I think it was 12,000 votes. And now you look at the margin, you say, well, this is a lean win for Donald Trump. I personally do see him winning the state by 3 points. I think 3 points is probably where this state is at right now for him. Polls are showing 2. We know he over performs the polls. Is it going to happen as much in 2020? I doubt it, but I think it could still happen to a degree. And so you look at Arizona and you say that's a very good win for Donald Trump, and that's a flip that he needs. It could certainly help in one of his different pathways. And Arizona comes into play here because if she flips, if Vice President Kamala Harris flips North Carolina, which it could happen, she could flip it. She's making up a lot of ground there. But Donald Trump holds on to Georgia, where he looks like he might be doing well. In Nevada, well, that puts him in striking distance with Pennsylvania again, where we'll look later, polls are showing him doing quite well. And so Arizona and Nevada are going to be crucial, especially if Donald Trump loses one of North Carolina or Georgia. This is when we'll know Arizona and Nevada are going to come and play, and they're going to be significant. If he's winning both of these states, Donald Trump, well, then, quite frankly, these can go out the window, and Pennsylvania will get him there at 270 without Nevada and Arizona. But these are important states, and states that Donald Trump definitely doesn't want to take for granted, and states that can definitely help him cross the finish line if it's a very close election. So we have we have Arizona as a lean state. We'll look at Georgia next, actually. Let's go to Georgia. You see Georgia, kind of a similar story as Arizona, maybe a little tighter, but there's just some interest. It's just these polls don't make any sense. You have Bloomberg here saying it's a tie. Remember, Bloomberg had Arizona up 3 for Vice President Kamala Harris, but then Fox News, who had Trump up 3 in Arizona, has Harris up 3 in Georgia. Some things are just not adding up, quite frankly. You have Atlas Intel, one of the most accurate pollsters in 2020, says Trump is only up 1. Still a good point for Donald Trump. He wants to be there. You have Emerson, New York Times, Siena, and Rasmussen, all 3 points and 4 points for Donald Trump. This aggregate leads to a 1-point lead. Honestly, I think it's a little bit better for Donald Trump. I think it's a lean win. I'd go 2 to 3 points right now. Mainly just because you look at the early voting data, you look at the turnout in the urban cities, and if it's a little bit lower and Donald Trump holds his margins and just closes in a little bit in those urban areas, that's tens of thousands of votes he's making up just in Atlanta, like Fulton and DeKalb County, in these counties with huge population centers. And you realize that him making up the margin of making it 3 points closer and the turnout's a little bit less, that's enough for him to flip the state by thousands and thousands of votes, and which is the biggest reason why I think he's up right now. The polls show he's up by over 1. I think he's going to win by about 2 to 3 right now in Georgia. That's where he's at, and that puts him at 246. So now we could look at North Carolina. It's a very important state here. Honestly, probably going to be closer than Georgia and Arizona, and you see that in the RCP average. Donald Trump only at 0.7. You have Atlas Intel. See, this is what's interesting. You have Atlas saying Trump is up in Arizona and Georgia, but in North Carolina, he's down by 3. You definitely can see that North Carolina is really where Harris has the most momentum, really, in the state. That's really what we're looking at. So overall, this is probably her only chance to flip a state. You see Texas, you see Florida, and you're like, yeah, those are really going to stay in the Trump category. So this is probably her biggest chance to flip a state. It's a really tight 0.7. I mean, most of these polls, pretty much all of them, it's in the margin of error. More recent polls do have Donald Trump up. You see Eastern Carolina Insider and the Washington Post up. He's up by about 2 points there. But Harris does have a few pretty important polls, like Atlas winning that. Of course, she's going to be winning in Bloomberg by 2. I mean, who's surprised by that? But New York Times, Siena has him up, and Rasmussen as well. So Donald Trump's still in a very good spot. You also have to compare it. In 2016, Trump was up by 0.3 in the state on October 1st, and he ended up winning the state by hundreds of thousands of votes. I believe it was around 3.5 points. Really wasn't close. Joe Biden, they had him up by about a point in October 1st, and Donald Trump ended up winning the state. He got about 50% of the vote. He won by about 1%. It wasn't even really too close. It was like 80,000 votes in the state. It really wasn't what they thought it was going to be. They really thought Joe Biden was going to flip that state, and Donald Trump held on and overperformed easily. And you look now, Donald Trump is in a good spot where he needs to be in North Carolina, I think, to hold on to the state. He's at 49% on the aggregate, and there's no way he's losing North Carolina with 49%, mainly just because of the third-party share. And so you look at that and you say, okay, I do think it's going to be a tilt state. I think it'll be under a point, especially as of right now. The poll shows that, and the aggregate overall shows that. And I do believe, based on basically everything I've seen, that I do think North Carolina will be under a point. But that's a huge hold for Donald Trump, because you see that if he holds these Sunbelt states, he's at 262, which gives him the opportunity to win one Rust Belt state, and he is the next president. So we'll look at Nevada next, actually, because Nevada won't be a deciding state. So we'll go to Nevada. This is a very interesting one. Donald Trump was up huge against Joe Biden in the polls before he dropped out. But then there's only been a few polls where Donald Trump's really up in Nevada. You see Insider Advantage and Rasmussen where he's up one. Everything else, even Atlas has him. Has Kamala Harris up by 3. Trafalgar has Kamala Harris up by 1. A lot of undecideds here. But, Bloomberg up by 7. There's no way Kamala Harris is winning Nevada by 7. There's not a world where any of these swing states goes to anybody by 7 points. I don't know how you have the guts to publish a poll that is going to be so horribly inaccurate. But the overall RCP average is a point and a half for Vice President Kamala Harris. Right now, honestly, Nevada does have a history of maybe overestimating Donald Trump a little bit, or Republicans in general. However, you look at 2020, you say Biden was up by 5.3. This was a state he lost by Donald Trump. Lost by 2.4 in 2016 and 2020. In 2016, they had him up by 2 on October 1st, basically a tie. And then you look at 2020, they had Biden up by 5. You're like, well, that's just completely inaccurate. So overall, I'm gonna make this analysis here, but I'm going to give it to Vice President Kamala Harris right now. If this election were held today, I think she'd be up in the state just narrowly, but I think it would be a tilt state for her at this moment. So that leaves us with the Rust Belt states right now. Donald Trump would only need to win one of them in this hypothetical, basically analyzing where the polls are. He only needs one state to be the next president. We'll start in Michigan, actually. 15 electoral votes there. Very important state, and a state that Donald Trump is starting to make up some ground in. I think it's pretty important to look at the history of Michigan. 2016, Clinton up by 5. 2020, Biden up by 5 in October 1st. 2016, they had that horribly wrong. Donald Trump actually won Michigan. And then in 2020, Donald Trump lost by, I believe it was just 2 points. It was pretty close in Michigan as well. And that's just horribly inaccurate. That's a 3-point margin. That's huge when you're trying to measure an election that was decided by 43,000 votes. The average right now has Donald Trump down by a point to Vice President Kamala Harris. He's only up in 2 polls. Alice, though, huge. Very interesting polls from Alice. You saw them come out where Harris is up in North Carolina and Nevada, but Donald Trump is up in all of the Rust Belt states. Actually, Atlas had him up in all of them. Michigan being the biggest, I believe, by a 4-point lead, which is huge. Rasmussen, obviously a tie. Insider Advantage was incredibly accurate with Michigan in 2020. They had Biden up by 2 on election day or the day before election day, and Biden won by 2. And this poll came out in mid-September, and you say Trump up 1. That's huge. Of course, Quinnipiac's going to have Harris up 5. It's just what you expect from these polls. Bloomberg, she's up 3. What do you expect? These are left-leaning pollsters. They're going to have Harris up in every poll going up to the election. And overall, she's up in the state right now by 1.4. And honestly, I do think the state is going to go to Donald Trump in the end. I'll put it as a tilt blue state. If I were to make a prediction right now, I think it would go to Donald Trump. But because I'm really basing this off of the polls right now and analyzing the polls, I'll put it in Harris's margin. But I don't see these states really wavering from one another. I think they are going to vote in a block once again in 2024. I guess only time will tell. We'll look at Wisconsin next. And this one, I just cannot take seriously sometimes. Where's Wisconsin? There she is. So we'll look at Wisconsin. Harris only up by 0.8. You have Alice Intel saying Trump's up by 2 in the Hill. Trump's up by 1. Rasmussen again as a tie, pretty much in all the Rust Belt states. And New York Times Siena, Harris up by 2. Bloomberg, Harris up by 3. Oh no, what a surprise. But the polling in Wisconsin has been historically so terrible. Biden up by 6. They got this wrong. RCP did by about 6 points in 2020. It was an absolute joke, the results in Wisconsin. Of course, Clinton up by 5 in 2016. That was incredibly inaccurate as well. And so you see Harris plus 8. I can't in my right mind say that Harris is going to win this state right now. I really do think that Donald Trump will win Wisconsin at the end of the day, and which is why I'm giving it to him by a tilt margin. I know I'm supposed to be analyzing the polls and looking at the numbers, but there's no way Donald Trump will lose this state. If he goes into election day down by 0.8 in Wisconsin, I would put my bank account that he is going to win the state. And so, which is the biggest reason why I think this is going to be a tilt state. And lastly, we'll look at Pennsylvania, where Donald Trump's actually up in the aggregate just narrowly 0.1, as close as it gets. But in case you can't tell, all you see is ties here, really. Tie, 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 tie. You see Alice Intel Trump up 3, Bloomberg up 5. Oh no, is that a surprise? Absolutely not. She's not winning the state by 5 points. They are insane. Like I don't understand how you could just wake up one day, see a Harris up 5 poll, and be like, oh, I don't care about my reputation. Post, like, it's an absolute how in your right mind can you post that and sleep at night? I don't know. Insider advantage up by Trump up by 2, and the newest Trafalgar poll, Trump's up by 3. And so these are some very good polls. The last 3 here for Donald Trump. Of course, Fox News has as a tie, a pretty liberal pollster there. If you look at history, and so Donald Trump in a good spot right now in Pennsylvania. I'll take him any day of the week up by 0.1 in Pennsylvania. I think it'll be a tilt state right now. I won't give it to him by 1 to 3 points. A lean margin. I'll give it to him by a tilt margin. But analyzing polls and some history, I really am seeing that Donald Trump right now is in the lead in the Electoral College. Nationally, I think it's also extremely tight. I think it'll be within a point or two. And if Donald Trump keeps it within 2 points, I really don't see him losing the Electoral College, which is the biggest reason why I have him winning 291 to 247 against Vice President Kamala Harris. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.